The call came on a Tuesday morning in November, while I was standing in my workshop shaping a piece of black walnut into what would have been a gift for my grandson's first Thanksgiving. My phone buzzed on the workbench, sawdust settling around it like snow. It was my son. "Dad," he said, his voice carrying that careful, rehearsed quality it gets when his wife has coached him beforehand. "About Thanksgiving this year." I set down the chisel. I already knew where this was going. Melissa's parents are flying in from Arizona, and you know how her mother is about space. The apartment feels crowded with just the three of us, and with the baby coming, we just thought maybe you could come over for dessert. Later in the evening. After. He wanted me to come after. After the turkey was carved, after the table was cleared, after Melissa's parents had claimed the good chairs and opened the good wine, after the real family dinner was done. "After," I said. "Dad, don't make this into something it isn't. Melissa is 8 months pregnant. She's stressed. You know how you and her father butt heads." I looked at the block of walnut on my workbench. I had been working it for 3 weeks. It was going to be a small rocking horse, something for the grandchild I hadn't even met yet. The child I was apparently permitted to see only on a schedule that suited my daughter-in-law. "I understand," I said. "Enjoy your Thanksgiving, Dad. I mean it. Enjoy it." I hung up before he could say another word. I stood in the workshop for a long moment, listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights. Then I walked to the corner cabinet, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a manila folder I hadn't touched in 4 years. Inside it was a document with a blue legal border and a notary stamp. I had hoped I would never need it. I put the folder on the workbench next to the unfinished rocking horse, picked up my phone, and called my accountant. "Gerald," I said when he answered, "I need you to pull the lease file for Unit 4B at Hargrove Commons and pull the convertible note for Meridian Home Tech LLC. A pause. "Frank, everything okay?" "Make the calls, Gerald," I said. "I'll explain later. I should tell you something about my son before I continue. He is a good-looking man, 34 years old, with his mother's eyes and a confidence I never quite taught him. He runs a small home automation startup I funded 3 years ago with $300,000 of my own money. Money, I told him, came from a private investor. He drives a car I bought. He lives in an apartment I own. He married a woman who has never once looked at me like I am anything other than an inconvenience. He does not know any of that. Not the full picture. He knows me as his father, a retired man who lives in a modest house outside the city, drives an 8-year-old truck, and fixes things in his workshop on weekends. He knows I spent 30 years in commercial real estate before I stepped back. He does not know what 30 years of acquiring distressed properties in growing markets produces when you live below your means and let the assets compound in silence. He does not know about the portfolio. He does not know that Hargrove Commons, the 18-unit building, where he has been renting his great deal apartment at below-market rates, is owned entirely by Hargrove Capital LLC, which is owned entirely by me. He does not know that the private investor who funded his startup is the same man he just asked to show up after dessert. I drove to Gerald's office that same afternoon. The November sky was flat and gray, the kind of sky that looks like a consequence. Gerald had the files spread on his desk when I arrived, his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. "The lease for 4B is month to month," he said. "Your son signed it 4 years ago through the management company. He has never once connected the property back to you. He thinks he's renting from a faceless LLC. He is renting from a faceless LLC, I said. What's the current market rate for that unit? Gerald typed something. Comparable units in that neighborhood are going for between $4,200 and $4,500 a month. He's been paying $18. Bring it to market rate, I said. Send the 30-day notice effective December 1st. Gerald looked at me over his glasses. That's a $2,400 monthly increase, Frank, with a baby on the way. I know when the baby is due, I said. What about the convertible note? He pulled the second folder. The document was 4 years old, drafted with the same quiet precision I applied to every significant financial decision of my life. The note gave me the right to convert my $300,000 loan into equity at a predetermined valuation, or to call the full balance due, with interest, if I chose to exercise the demand clause. At the time, I had included it as a formality. I thought I would never use it. The interest has been accruing at 6% annually, Gerald said. The total balance due, if you call it today, is just under $382,000. Does the startup have that kind of liquidity? Gerald laughed softly, without humor. Their last quarterly showed $60,000 in operating cash. They burned through most of your original investment on product development. And Frank, he put himself on payroll 18 months ago. $65,000 a year. I sat back in the chair and let that land. My son had taken the money I gave him to build something real, and he had quietly started paying himself from it. Not illegally, but without telling me, and without the company showing the revenue to justify it. Send the demand notice, I said. Certified mail. Give him 1 week between the two letters. Let him absorb the rent increase first. I drove home through the gray afternoon, stopping at a small diner on the edge of town. I ordered coffee and a slice of pie and ate alone at the counter. The waitress was around 60, with the kind of steady warmth that comes from years of taking care of strangers. She refilled my cup without being asked. Rough day? She said. Clarifying, I said. She nodded like she knew exactly what I meant. I spent Thanksgiving alone in my house, which was not the modest bungalow my son imagined, but a 4-bedroom craftsman on 2 acres that I had restored by hand over the course of a decade. I cooked a turkey breast for one, opened a bottle of Burgundy I had been saving, and sat at the kitchen table with the folder of documents in front of me and a photograph of my late wife on the shelf above the fireplace. Her name was Carol. She died 6 years ago, and she was the only person in the world who knew the full measure of what I had built. She used to say I hid my light so completely that even the people standing beside me were in the dark. She meant it as a gentle criticism. I took it as a compliment. I missed her most on the days when I had to make hard decisions. The rent increase notice arrived at my son's apartment on November 29th. I know this because my property manager sent me the certified mail confirmation. What happened next? I learned in pieces, first from Gerald, then from my son himself, who called me on December 3rd with the specific energy of a man who is scared but does not want to show it. Dad, he said, our building just sent a notice raising the rent by $2,400 a month starting January 1st. That's insane. Melissa is due in 6 weeks. Do you know anyone in property management? Any connections who could help us negotiate? I swirled the coffee in my mug. That is a significant increase, I said. It's a crisis, he said. I already called 3 places. Nothing decent in our neighborhood under $3,500. We've been so lucky with this apartment, Dad. I don't know how we missed that the rent was this far below market. You missed it because I wanted you to. I wanted you close. I wanted to take care of you without you knowing it. Because I was afraid that if you knew, you would think less of yourself. I was wrong about that. I'll see what I can do, I said. But this might be an opportunity. You've been talking about buying for years. We don't have a down payment, he said immediately. Not with the startup still in growth phase. How is the startup? I asked. A pause. We're getting there, he said. Which is what people say when the answer is nowhere close to where they need to be. Good, I said. Keep working at it. I hung up and texted Gerald one line. Send the note, demand, tomorrow. The certified letter arrived at Meridian Home Tech's registered address on December 5th. It was a single page, clean and unambiguous. The note holder was exercising the demand clause and requesting full repayment of $382,000 within 30 days, or the note would convert to equity, giving the note holder a controlling 51% stake in the company. My son called me that same evening. He did not call about the letter specifically. He called because he was already unraveling and needed someone steady to talk to. He did not know he was talking to the man who had sent it. The worst thing just happened, he said. Our primary investor called a demand note. We have 30 days to pay back almost $400,000 or hand over majority control of the company I've spent 4 years building. Who is the investor? I asked, as though I didn't know. Some LLC. We dealt with them through an intermediary. I never met the actual principals. Dad, this is going to kill the company. If they take the equity, I'm just an employee in my own business. Did you read the note when you signed it 4 years ago? I asked quietly. Silence. Ryan, did you read it? The attorney said it was standard, he said. We were in a hurry. The investor was ready to fund. I trusted the process. I know, I thought. I was counting on that. And I had hoped we would never get here. I had hoped the business would grow, that he would pay it back in his own time, that he would never give me a reason to open that folder. Get your attorney to review the document thoroughly, I said. And whatever happens, don't make any decisions out of panic. Easy for you to say, he said. And there was something brief and unconscious in his voice, a small edge that told me he was already looking for someone to blame. The call from my daughter-in-law's mother came 2 days later. Her name is Patricia, and she is the kind of woman who has strong opinions about everything except the things she herself is responsible for. She called at 8 in the morning from an Arizona area code. "Frank," she said, without a greeting, "I think it's time we had a direct conversation about what you're doing to my daughter and her family." "Good morning, Patricia," I said. "Don't good morning me. Melissa is 8 months pregnant, and her husband just told us they might lose their business and their apartment in the same month. I need to understand your role in this." "My role?" I said. "Ryan says you know people in property management. I want to know if you had anything to do with that rent increase." I poured a glass of orange juice and sat at the kitchen table. "Patricia," I said, "I am a retired man who lives outside the city and fixes furniture in his garage. What would I have to do with a property management company?" She accepted that, because it fit the image she had of me. People believe what they expect to see. It is one of the most reliable things I have observed in 40 years of business. "Well, someone is behind all of this," she said, "and I want you to know that Melissa and Ryan need support right now. Her father and I would help, but we're on a fixed income with our own expenses." "Of course," I said. "Give Melissa my love." I ended the call and immediately rang Gerald. "Get me everything public record on Patricia and Dennis Walsh, Arizona." What came back 2 days later was not surprising, but it was clarifying. Patricia and Dennis Walsh were not struggling the way the phrase fixed income implies. They owned a vacation property in Sedona, outright. 2 newer vehicles. Dennis drew $4,200 a month from a union pension. They were comfortable. They simply believed the correct response to their daughter's situation was to call her father-in-law and apply pressure rather than open their own checkbook. They had been seated at my son's Thanksgiving table while I was told to come after dessert, and they could not be bothered to write a check for their pregnant daughter's moving expenses. The week before Christmas, my son drove to my house for the first time in 4 months. He called ahead, which he never used to do, and when he pulled into the driveway, I noticed he had come alone. He sat in his car for a moment before getting out. We sat in the kitchen. I made coffee. He sat across from me with his hands around the mug and looked, for the first time in years, like the boy I used to drive to baseball practice. He looked tired. He looked like someone who had been carrying a weight he did not expect. "Dad," he said, "I need to come clean about something." "Okay," I said. "The startup is in real trouble. This investor, whoever they are, has a legitimate claim. Our attorney reviewed it, and there's nothing we can do if they convert. I'll have a minority stake in my own company." He stopped, swallowed. "And the apartment, we found 2 places we can afford, but they're both 40 minutes from Melissa's doctor, and she's due in 3 weeks. I don't know how things got this bad this fast." I looked at my son. I looked at the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. I thought about Carol and what she would say. "Can I show you something?" I said. I went to the study and came back with 2 folders. I set them both on the table between us. He opened the first one and went still. It was the ownership structure of Hargrove Capital LLC, with the tenant roster for Hargrove Commons attached. Unit 4B was highlighted in yellow. His name was on the lease. He stared at it for a long time. He turned to the second page. The LLC registration document, with my name as sole member. "You own the building," he said. "For 8 years," I said. "Since before you moved in, you've been my landlord. I've been keeping your rent $1,500 below market for 4 years, yes." He closed the first folder with careful slowness. He opened the second one, the convertible note. I watched his face as he read down to the signature page. He found his own signature at the bottom, rushed and loopy. The signature of a 30-year-old man too excited about a term sheet to read what he was signing. "The private investor," he said. "Was me," I said. $382,000. "Yes." He set the folder down. He did not shout. He did not cry. He laughed a short, hollow sound with no joy in it. "Why didn't you just tell me?" "Because you would have treated it differently," I said. "I wanted you to build something real. I didn't want it to be your father's company. I wanted it to be yours." He was quiet. "Why are you showing me now?" he said. I wrapped both hands around my own mug. "Because on November 19th you called to tell me I could come to Thanksgiving after dessert. After your wife's parents had been seated at a table I was paying for, in an apartment I own, made possible by the investment I was bankrolling. You told me I made things uncomfortable." I paused. "You made that call the same week your wife posted online that she was grateful for, and I quote, a holiday season finally free from family drama." He had the decency to look ashamed. "I am not a piece of furniture to be moved into the hallway when company comes," I said. "I am your father." "I know," he said, very quietly. "Do you?" He looked up. His eyes were wet, but he did not look away. "No," he said. "I don't think I did. I think I knew you were there, the way you know a bridge is there. You just cross it. You never stop to think about whether it's holding." We sat with that for a moment. "What happens now?" he said. "That depends entirely on what you do next," I said. 2 days after Christmas, my son drove to my management company, and asked to speak with the property manager about his lease. He did not know I had called ahead. He did not know that the manager on duty had instructions to show him the full picture, honestly. The manager showed him the comparable listings. He showed him the market analysis. And then, because I had asked him to, he showed my son a full accounting of every single month his rent had been subsidized. The difference, column by column, for 4 years, $42,000. My son drove straight from that office to my house without calling first. I was in the workshop when he knocked on the door frame. His face was a complicated thing, gratitude and embarrassment, and something that looked like grief, all occupying the same expression. $42,000, he said. "Give or take," I said, setting down my planer. "Dad, why?" He stopped. Started again. I never once thought to ask why the rent was so reasonable. I just thought we'd found a good deal. "You did," I said. "I made sure of it. I don't understand why you wouldn't tell me." I picked up a scrap piece of oak and turned it in my hands. "When your mother was sick," I said, "the last 2 years I paid for everything. The specialist in Philadelphia, the experimental protocol, the in-home care at the end. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel like you owed something during the hardest time of your life." I looked at him. "That is what fathers do, Ryan. They hold things up quietly so the people they love don't have to feel the weight." He was crying now, not quietly, openly, the way he used to when he was small and didn't have a reputation to protect. "I treated you like a problem," he said. "You treated me like furniture," I said, gently. "It happens. The question is, what you do when you realize it." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "What do I need to do?" I walked to the corner cabinet and pulled out a third document Gerald had drafted the week before. I handed it to my son. It was a restructured agreement, the demand note converted to a 10-year repayment plan at 0% interest, with a single condition attached. He read the condition clause twice. "You want me to run the startup financials on an open book basis?" he said. "Every quarter. With you. I want to know what I invested in," I said. "Not to control it. Because I want to watch you build it. Those are very different things." He kept reading. "And you're forgiving the rent difference. I'm applying it as a credit against the note," I said. 42,000 of your 382 is already settled." He looked up. "Dad, it's an accounting entry," I said. "Don't cry about accounting." He laughed. A real laugh this time. It sounded like a window opening after a long winter. What happened with my daughter-in-law's parents matters to the shape of this story, so I will tell it plainly. It came out in the chaotic weeks before the baby arrived, when pressure has a way of stripping things down to what is real. Her parents arrived from Arizona, claiming they had come to help with the newborn. They brought 3 suitcases for a 10-day visit, which was the first sign. The second was that her father mentioned on day 2 that their Arizona lease was up in the air, and the Sedona property had been tied up in some refinancing. The third was that her mother began casually asking which local storage companies had the best monthly rates. They were not visiting. They were staging a relocation. My son figured it out on day 4, when he found a change of address form on the kitchen counter, their names, forwarding address listed as his apartment. He called me from his car, parked outside his own building. "They're moving in," he said. "I know," I said. "You knew?" Gerald ran a check when her mother called me in December. The Sedona property was foreclosed on November 15th. They've been staying with a relative since then. They didn't come for the holidays, Ryan. They came because they needed somewhere to go. The silence on the line was long and very specific. "She let you get uninvited from Thanksgiving," he said slowly, working through it. "She needed a reason to secure the apartment without you asking questions. She needed the space. She needed the address," I said. "And she needed you, compliant and focused on keeping her comfortable. She needed me gone before I noticed the boxes." Another silence. "I uninvited my own father from Thanksgiving," he said, "so my in-laws could move into an apartment you own without you noticing." "That's the shape of it," I said. "I didn't know, Dad. I want you to know I didn't know what was behind it. Melissa asked me to make the call and I did it. I didn't ask why hard enough." "No," I said. "You didn't. What do I do?" "That," I said, "is the right question, and it's yours to answer. I'm not going to tell you how to manage your marriage, but the apartment has a 2-person occupancy clause. Her parents cannot legally establish residency there without my written approval as the property owner, which I will not be giving, not without a conversation. A real one. At a table, face to face. No more managed phone calls." The dinner happened on a Saturday in late January. My son cooked, which he is not particularly good at, and the effort made everything taste better. My daughter-in-law sat at one end of the table, enormous and exhausted and, for the first time, looking at me without the careful blankness she usually wore. Her parents sat across from me. Gerald joined us by phone for the practical portion. He had prepared a guest occupancy agreement 60 days, with conditions, renewable by mutual consent. Her mother said it felt like a business transaction. "It is a business transaction," I said pleasantly. "You are staying in my building. I am choosing to make that possible. Those are the terms." Her father, to his credit, reached across the table at the end of the evening and shook my hand. "Fair enough, Frank," he said. It was the first time he had used my name. My grandson was born on February 9th at 6:47 in the morning. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. My son called me from the waiting room while they were still getting the baby cleaned up, and I could hear in his voice something I had not heard since he was a child, a kind of unguarded astonishment, the sound of a person encountering something too large to be managed or performed. "He's here, Dad," he said. "I know," I said. "How's Melissa?" "Incredible," he said, and the word came out like he had just discovered what it meant. "Get some rest," I said. "I'll be there in the morning." I went to the workshop that night and finished the rocking horse. I worked until 2 in the morning, sanding and fitting and applying a final coat by lamplight. It was black walnut, smooth as still water, with the kind of weight that tells you it will outlast everyone in the room. I brought it to the hospital the next morning. My son met me in the hallway outside the room. He looked destroyed in the best possible way. No sleep, no pretense, no performance. He hugged me before I could say anything. It was not the brief, obligatory hug of a man who views his father as an inconvenience. It was the hug of someone who has been holding his breath for a very long time and has finally remembered how to exhale. "Come see him," he said. I stood at the side of the bassinet and looked at my grandson for the first time. He was asleep with a completeness that only newborns manage, as though the world had not yet done anything to deserve his attention. I thought about Carol. I thought about the workshop, and the chisel I had set down in November when the call came, and the folder I had pulled from the bottom drawer. I thought about 40 years of early mornings and late nights and the slow, patient building of something that would matter after I was gone. I thought, this is what it was for. My daughter-in-law looked at me from the bed. She looked like someone who had just come through something hard and was not yet sure who she was on the other side of it. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for having me," I said. Small words. Also the whole truth. There are people who will tell you that money and love belong in separate categories. I have spent 64 years learning they do not. Money is compressed time, hours you traded away from the people who needed you in order to build something that would protect them later. When someone takes that compressed time and treats it as their birthright, they are not just taking your money. They are taking the Saturdays you worked instead of coaching Little League, the anniversaries you shortened, the evenings you stayed late when you could have gone home. I did not cut off my son's rent subsidy to punish him. I cut it off because he could not feel the weight of his own life while I was invisibly holding half of it up. A man cannot find his footing on ground he does not know he's standing on. The note restructuring is on schedule. My son sends me a quarterly report now, not because I demanded it beyond that first condition, but because he said it helped him think more clearly to have someone he trusted reading the numbers alongside him. The startup had its first profitable quarter in March. A small profit, a real one, the kind that means something because no one else's checkbook made it happen. The rocking horse is in my grandson's room, in the corner near the window that catches afternoon light. My son tells me the baby watches it from across the room, sometimes not reaching for it yet, just looking, the way children look at things that are solid and beautiful and clearly made to last. I like to think he already knows it was made for him. By someone who sat in a workshop with sawdust on his hands and hope in the grain of the wood, and decided even on the hardest days, especially on the hardest days, that the building was worth it. I did not teach my son to be the man he is becoming by giving him everything. I taught him by finally late, imperfectly, at a cost neither of us expected, giving him nothing. By stepping back and letting the floor he thought was solid turn out to be the wall I had been holding up all along. He had to fall before he could stand. So did I. If you believe that love without honesty isn't love, it's just a loan with no terms, hit that like button. Subscribe to Voice of Pa for more stories about the long, necessary, costly work of letting the people you love learn how to carry their own weight.